The NHL Draft is coming up soon. And in order for fans to know what's going to happen at the fourth overall pick for the Utah Mammoth, it's probably worth just taking a second, checking the blood pressure of where this team is now. Gonna give us our best chance of trying to understand what GM Bill Armstrong is thinking about entering the 2025 NHL Draft in Los Angeles. Always at the top of his mind, the finances. Utah has $21.5 million in cap space, and the Mammoth absolutely seem to be a team that will be active in free agency. We'll talk more about that later. Expected personnel, it looks like Nick Bjugstad is not going to be back. Michael Carcone does not want to be back, and I think Robert Bortuzzo is not back either. There's an opportunity that Jack McBain is likely going to be back. I think it'd be very surprising if they don't find a way to extend Jack McBain as an RFA this summer. And then they'll have to make a couple other choices. Maybe they'll bring back Kyler Yamamoto as a fourth liner. Maybe they liked what they were able to get from him. And so maybe that's something that they'll do. And then they brought in key entry-level contracts from Russia, Daniel But and Dmitry Shimashev, fresh off of winning the Gagarin Cup in the KHL in Russia for Lokomotiv. You always wonder with Russian prospects, do they come from Russia in order to play in the minors? Typically, no. Reputationally, no, they don't. They like to be in the NHL. If they're not going to be in the NHL, they like to be in Russia. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes with Daniel But and Dmitry Shimashev. My guess is that Bill Armstrong is going to have them go develop in the minors for at least a season, or at least as long as he can convince them to be down there. But both of them have the ability to play high-level hockey on high-level competitive teams like they were on Lokomotiv with professionals, grown men. They went and just experienced it in the gauntlet of the KHL playoffs and ended up lifting the cup. So maybe Daniel But and Dmitry Shimashev will be on this team next year. One thing we know for sure is that when Andre Torini and Bill Armstrong get together, there's a line that they feel real good about entering next season, and it's the third line. Lawson Krause, Jack McBain, Josh Doan. The third line was nowhere last year until Josh Doan came into the lineup. When it was Nick Bjugstad, Matthias Michelli, and Lawson Krause, it was real bad. Real bad. But then Josh Doan came in. They slotted Jack McBain with them in the middle, and he centered that group into a checking force. Demons on the forecheck, absolutely no fun to play against, and they tilted the ice routinely during their shifts. And so they think that they found something with that third line, and I agree with them. So on opening day, there's very, very little chance that you're not going to see Krause, McBain, and Doan playing together on the third line. And in the top six, probably in the top line, you're definitely going to see Gunther, Cooley, and Keller. This is a group that they definitely feel good about. They definitely like the personnel and the players and assets in particular. They're going to have Gunther and Cooley play next to each other no matter what, whether it's on the top line or if it's on the second line. The question is will they fit in really well with Clayton Keller? Well, Logan Cooley developed his game a lot last year, especially on the defensive end, and it was really exciting to watch near the end of the season when he became more of an agitator, where he started to get under the skin of other teams and play more physically, stand up for himself. And I think he's just going to develop that part of his game even more. So really fascinating to see the development of that 21-year-old star for the Utah Mammoth. And those three players are definitely part of the top six equation. The question is what's going to happen with the second line? Well, if it's anything like last year, you're going to see Barrett Hayton and Nick Schmaltz be involved in the top six. And again, fit is not really something that they ever smoothed out all the way. We know Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller like playing together. Barrett Hayton centered for those two. It went okay. It wasn't unbelievable, but it went pretty well. But those are the 5 players that are definitely going to be in the top 6 for Utah next year, barring any trades or something wild at the draft. You're going to see Nick Schmaltz and Barrett Hayton somewhere in the top 6. Here we have them listed as second line. Now, the question is who they're going to be with. Well, there's been lots of speculation that this is where free agency comes in. Now, Utah has never really been a destination for free agents in other professional sports. Will it be different for hockey? For some reason, people are kind of bullish on the opportunity that Utah has to bring in high-level NHL free agents. We'll see. Lots of conversation has happened about Mitch Marner. The question is if he's commanding $14 million, do you use 14 of your $21.5 million on Mitch Marner? Remember, you got to re-sign Logan Cooley for a lot of money very soon. Long term, do you give up on Logan Cooley to have Mitch Marner? Or do you say, I'm happy with Mitch Marner and Logan Cooley, but we're not going to have anything else? It'll be a very, very interesting thing to see that. Other potential players. Well, there's been conversation about Brock Besser coming over from the Vancouver Canucks. Or maybe it's Nikolai Ehlers on the wing. There's been some conversation about the Rat, Brad Marchand, potentially being brought in free agency. But you can see the problem is who's going to be that 6th player in the top 6. Maybe the answer is that you use Matias Maccelli, a healthy scratch for the most of the second half of the season last year. Maccelli last season took a step backwards in his career. Maccelli, not a strong defensive player, not strong at attacking the net. He is a good playmaker. His ability to make saucer passes and feel and read the ice offensively is thrilling at times, but he cannot finish the puck, and other teams have scouted it, and they've begun to defend him accordingly. And so the question is, what is Matias Maccelli going to be? And if you can't play him in your top 6, my opinion is, then you can't play him. Do they solve Matias Maccelli, or is it time to move on? Or will there be injuries that force us into a situation to try Matias Maccelli? You could potentially slot in Alexander Kerfoot, who has played minutes as a versatile player, kind of everywhere on the ice, but it's not really the ideal for your top 6. Maybe you just take a swing and try Daniel Boot. That's probably going to happen only if they strike out entirely in free agency. But if the money's right, I think they're not going to strike out entirely. The question is do they land a huge name like Mitch Marner or even Marchand? I'd be very surprised if that happens, and it would mean a ton for the market in general if the hockey team here in Utah could find a way to bring in huge unrestricted free agents. Changes a lot of the way that people may feel about this team long term, especially in competition with the Utah Jazz. And of course, the 4th line. I love what they've done with the 4th line. Typically, you're going to see Alexander Kerfoot playing 4th line minutes alongside Kevin Stenlund. I love the idea of having specialists there, that you can use Kevin Stenlund as your awesome face-off guy and have him go to work on the penalty kill. Kerfoot can fill in wherever you need him to as it relates to injuries that are definitely going to occur, and his versatility gives you some real options there. And currently, because there's no other player signed, maybe it's Yamamoto that you bring in some energy on that 4th line, or maybe you play Liam O'Brien, let him go out, try to agitate, be an energy guy, potentially go get in a couple fights and probably lose them. So Utah needs a top 6 winger. And maybe you decide, actually, Barrett Hayton's contract's going to run out here. He's entering the final year of his deal. Maybe we make a trade. Maybe we get in free agency, we go after a center. And maybe we find a way to trade off Barrett Hayton. Who knows? Be fascinating to see what happens there. However, we know that they need at least one winger in their top 6 for sure, as things currently stand, and another winger for their depth, their fourth line as a potential option deep in the lineup. The story with defensemen is a lot clearer. The 6 defensemen on this team next year are all under contract, and they're definitely going to be the top 6 players for this team. Sergachev, Cole, Mata, Kesselring, Marino, and Durzi. There was a lot of health problems with this group last year, and so there may be opportunities for that 7th defenseman to find their way in, and this is where there will be some intrigue. Nick DeSimone was re-signed earlier. Is Nick DeSimone in line to be the more traditional 7th defenseman? I think probably, because you usually don't want to bring your prospects in to sit on the bench as the 7. However, there are a lot of other guys that you need to consider. For instance, Artem Duda and Dmitry Shimashev. Maybe Maverick Lamoureux is ready to go. You've got Maximilian Zuber, and then, of course, Valimaki's got his injury, and we'll see what his progress with his injury looks like. But as things currently stand, you might want a more veteran 7 and leave all of those guys to go play in Tucson. But, again, it'll be really interesting to see what they decide to do, because within the prospect group for the Utah Mammoth are a lot of defensemen who are kind of like ready to go, where it's time to find out what they look like in the NHL level. There just isn't any space to do that this year. We're 1 year away from finding out what's going to happen on the blue line with all of these talented prospects, or you might be seeing one of these players be traded. They just re-signed Karel Vejmelka, and he's on a long-term deal, so he's definitely going to be the starter in the net. The question is, what's going on with Connor Ingram as he continues to go through the wellness program? We wish him the very best, but who's going to be the backup goalie for Utah Hockey Club this next year? We don't have all the details of how things are going with Connor Ingram. I think Connor Ingram would be completely reasonable as a backup goalie. The question is he able to compete? Is he going to play? And if he's not going to be able to, Utah probably needs to do something to ensure they've got stronger options for a backup goalkeeper.